Alrighty, here's the map of the major arcana. This is a conceptual diagram, let's say. This is not the way things are. This is a map of the process of the major arcana as it occurs to me. I don't know as I've ever seen it quite depicted like this, but I guess I like to think of it more as a cycle and a circular process than those three specific lines of cards, those 3 lines of 7 cards. But the diagram gives us a good way to talk about what are some of the major themes to keep in mind as you're thinking about the major arcana cards. Now, in some ways, these cards are very complex, so it's going to be helpful to remember that the system as a whole follows a few basic rules. And the first is the rule of cycles. That being, I think you can see that here, that everything in the tarot moves in cycles. Everything in the tarot has a beginning, an emergence, a phase of development, a phase of transition, and then a phase of conclusion. Now you can see that over on the right-hand side of the map, the line of development or the process cycles back into this unknown space and reconnects us back to the Fool. That does not mean that we move around in ruts and never get anywhere. What this means is that things in the tarot move in circles of development. So I'm going to do a little visual here. We start out here, we complete that phase, and then we're here, and then we're here. And then as we move through each of our phases of development, we move in expanding circles and cycles of consciousness and awareness. So the first rule that the tarot abides by is the rule of cycles. The second rule is the rule of the opposites, and that is that every card in the tarot is either strongly on the receptive side, strongly on the dynamic side, or is some attempt at reunification of the opposites. So what are the opposites? The opposites are the polarities that hold together experience as we know it. The light and the dark, the male and the female, the solar, the lunar, the good, the bad, the proton, the electron. We would not have an experience of our physicality if it weren't for these opposites. You could not see or differentiate the things that are in the room around you if there wasn't light and dark, if there wasn't space and no space. So this idea of the opposites is something that is always present in the tarot. And the only card that stands outside that system is the Fool. The Fool is the place where there is no dividedness. Every other card is either strongly on one side or the other of the polarity or is an attempt at reunification. So the cards of reunification, for instance, here's the icon for the Lovers card. We see integration trying to happen here, opposites coming together. We could look at the Temperance card that's here on the diagram. We could see that there's the blue, which represents the receptive lunar principle, and the red, which represents the dynamic solar principle. And in the middle is the color that you get by blending those two. In the middle is the purple. So here we have an attempt at reunification. Okay, the third principle is the principle of acceptance, or the third rule is the rule of acceptance. And what that means is that even though there are certain cards that we may or may not want to experience, the Death, the Devil, the Tower, sometimes the Judgment card, these are the cards that people kind of recoil sometimes when they see them and they don't really understand what they mean. There's a lot in tarot that isn't what it looks like, but that's not really the point of this principle. The principle of acceptance means that each of the icons here represent a part of a journey. And like they say in Maine, you can't get there from here. You can't get to this place of resolution without moving through each and every step. So there is no good or bad in the tarot. There are things that are more pleasant than others. There are things that are more challenging than others. But everything is a part of the system of growth and transformation. And we'd be wise to keep our judgmental mind out of the picture as we're working with the tarot. So essentially what the major arcana represents, and you can see the thread of the yellow, that even though each of these icons represent a different step along the path of development, the yellow is our God spark. The yellow is our piece of divinity, that the Fool carries that into its incarnation. As conscious human beings, we work and evolve with that notion until we have a place of conscious identification with it. And then we take that knowledge and begin a new cycle of development. So that's a lot. That's a significant process. That is the human experience. And those are the sorts of things that the major arcana cards depict for us.